afternoon and welcome to Live at 4 on this Thursday. Feels like Friday, I don't know why.
Feels like Friday and it feels like spring, although it's cooling off this afternoon.
Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But over the lunch hour is nice and then it's going downhill.
Winter is making a comeback.
Yeah, it ain't over yet.
No.
We'll get to the weather in a minute, just a bit, but first here's what's making news on this Thursday. Madison police say they've closed a cold case from 25 years ago.
A new trial could be granted to a Verona woman charged with reckless homicide 10 years ago.
And the public impeachment hearings wrap up in Washington. We'll share the latest from Capitol Hill.
Let's take a look outside today. It's sort of been a story of two weather days. Very mild this morning, near 50 degrees.
Yeah, but then the front went through. It's
right.
Windy, but just a brief shot of cold. Dave Caulfield is in the backyard. Brief, I hope, is the operative word here.
I think so, Mark and Susan. Yeah, this weekend is not looking all that bad, but we've had about 3 seasons in one, or at least by the end of the day, we will have had 3 seasons in one on this Thursday. So high temperatures, as Mark and Susan were mentioning, in the lower to middle 50s for many across southern Wisconsin, but just over the last couple of hours, we've seen those temperatures crash about 10 to 15 degrees already in the mid-30s in the Dells, at 41 in Madison, 46 in Janesville. So those temperatures are falling fast this evening. It will be breezy into tonight as well. Madison still looking at those cloudy skies on the Edgewater Skycam. No rain to speak of anymore, though. Those winds are still gusty out of the north and west as that front moves through at about 25 to 30 miles per hour. So we'll stay breezy tonight, and skies are gradually clearing into the overnight hours. We're starting off in the mid-20s after some of us hit the mid-50s today. So the 20s come at us for tomorrow morning. Now let's take a look at your first alert traffic update. Park Street and the Beltline, we are seeing those normal delays start to pile up eastbound, westbound, not looking too bad, so no major accidents or incidents to report across Dane County, but we are seeing those normal slowdowns on the Beltline, especially eastbound back to about Verona Road through Park Street and moving closer to about Southtown Drive. So eastbound Verona Road to John Nolan, that'll cost you 10 minutes, running a little bit slow, average speed of around 25 miles per hour on the Beltline, and some other routes in and around Madison. On 151 northbound downtown to Sun Prairie, not looking too bad, 18 minutes with an average speed of around 30 miles per hour. That is your first alert traffic update. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll talk more about a nice weekend for the opening of gun deer season, but some uncertainty when it comes to the impacts of a potential storm near Thanksgiving. I'll see you in a few.
All right, we'll see you then. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. First at 4, an Indiana man is in custody for the homicide of a Madison woman in 1994.
Police are crediting DNA profiling as the breakthrough in this case. That's led to the arrest of 52-year-old Willie L. Coleman Jr. in the 40-year-old death of Lula Cunningham. Maddie O'Neill talked with the police and is back with more information. Maddie?
Well, Coleman, who was arrested yesterday, is facing the charge of first-degree reckless homicide. Police say Cunningham was found on the 1600 block of Freeport Road on November 4th, 1994, severely injured from being strangled and struck by a vehicle. Court documents show there were indications she had been sexually assaulted. She was pronounced dead on scene. In the past 25 years, detectives have continued to work to solve the homicide, but it wasn't until 2015 that a breakthrough came from a DNA indexing match, which allowed investigators to put together a case.
It's not every day that any police department is able to make an arrest in a 25-year-old homicide, so it's something that I think certainly is impactful on us as an agency, and obviously is very impactful to the family.
Court documents show the Wisconsin State Crime Lab found evidence submitted from Cunningham's sexual assault kit had matched the DNA of Coleman. Police say they've been in contact with Cunningham's family throughout the process, and today they're appreciative of this resolution. Coming up at 5 and 6, we'll have more on the details that led to Coleman's arrest today.
That's fascinating work. Maddie, thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. A woman is recovering from minor injuries after she was grazed by a bullet while inside of her home. Just after 9:30 last night, officers responded to reports of gunfire on the 200 block of Bunting Lane. That's not far from the Dane County County Regional Airport. While no one on that street reported injuries, a woman on nearby Oriole Lane said she was hit by a stray bullet while she was in her bedroom. The incident happened about an hour after gunfire was reported not far away near Aberg Avenue. Police are also investigating after a Wanakee man says he was run over by his own SUV during a carjacking. These pictures were captured by a neighbor during the incident. The victim says he parked on the 1700 block of Mainley Street on Madison's Near East Side when a man holding a knife threatened him. While a fight ensued outside of the vehicle, a woman jumped into the driver's seat and hit the gas. That's when the victim fell to the ground and got his wrist and leg run over. The suspects were able to drive off. If you have any information, you're asked to call Madison Area Crime Stoppers.
A woman faces her second OWI after a car crashed into a Madison small business for the second time this year. Police say they arrested 32-year-old Keisha A.L. early Sunday morning, that is, on suspicion of drunken driving around 2 a.m. Sunday. She allegedly ran her vehicle into the Dorenzo Monument Company in the 2400 block of Regent Street. This is video from earlier this week when we talked with the manager of the store. The store had also been hit by a car in January, closing the business for over 4 months. A Verona woman convicted of reckless homicide nearly a decade ago is asking a Dane County judge to grant her a new trial.
In 2009, Jennifer Hancock was sentenced to 13 years in prison for the death of a baby boy at her in-home daycare. Rose Schmidt was in Dane County Court today as a judge listened to some new evidence in the case. Rose?
Yeah, that's right. The forensic pathologist who actually performed an autopsy on baby Lincoln Wilbur 12 years ago says he can no longer say abuse was the only possible cause of death. Hancock was convicted in his death. She's represented by the Wisconsin Innocence Project, which filed a motion for a new trial in February, arguing that the medical testimony in the 2009 trial was flawed. Dr. Michael Steer testified originally that a subdural hematoma seen on the baby showed signs of abuse. But in court today, he said other infants with a similar condition have died by means other than abuse. The prosecution questioned whether he had the research to back up this new finding.
So for that reason and other reasons embedded in my original examination and autopsy report of Lincoln Wilbur, I no longer can state to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Lincoln died from a non-accidental trauma.
Essentially today you're expressing less of a degree of medical certainty about the conclusions from those autopsy findings.
Yes.
But you're not saying that your testimony was inaccurate in any way, shape, or form.
That's correct.
Today was the first of 4 hearings where a judge is listening to new evidence and must decide whether to grant Hancock a new trial. But we're not expecting that decision for at least a month or so. Hancock also argues that her original defense attorney, John Hyland, who is now a Dane County judge, did not perform to the best of his abilities. Hyland is also expected to testify this week in this set of hearings.
All right, thank you, Rose.
The final public House impeachment inquiry hearings for the week is over after a day of testimony from embassy official David Holmes and former top White House Russia aide Fiona Hill. Katherine Johnson is on Capitol Hill with more.
I had firsthand knowledge regarding certain events.
David Holmes, a staffer at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, said he came forward with his recollection of a phone call between President Trump and EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland after hearing criticism. Other witnesses had only offered secondhand accounts.
You heard President Trump ask Ambassador Sondland, is he going to do the investigation?
Yes, sir.
President Trump pushed back on Twitter. Never have I been watching a person making a call, which was not on speakerphone, and been able to hear or understand a conversation. Former top Russia aide for the White House, Fiona Hill, cautioned Republicans on the panel against pushing conspiracy theories.
I refuse to be part of an effort to legitimize an alternate narrative that the Ukrainian government is a U.S. adversary and that Ukraine, not Russia, attacked us in 2016.
Both witnesses expressed concerns over the administration's dealings with Ukraine. Holmes said it should have been evident to officials from both countries. Military aid and a White House meeting were contingent on Ukraine announcing the investigations President Trump wanted.
There was nodding agreement So did I go through every single word in the call? No, because everyone by that point agreed. It was obvious what the president was pressing for.
We aren't finished yet.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi hinted there could be more witnesses. Republicans and the president say the summary of his July 25th call with the Ukrainian president outweighs witness testimony. Katherine Johnson, CBS News, Washington.
And CBS News has learned several Republican senators met with White House counsel this morning to discuss impeachment strategies should the House send over articles of impeachment.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been indicted on allegations of corruption, a first in the nation's history. Netanyahu has vowed to stay in power, calling the criminal charges against him an attempted coup. Israel's Attorney General indicted the 70-year-old for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. The charges against the prime minister stem from 3 separate corruption cases. They include claims that he offered bribes in exchange for favorable news coverage and that he accepted gifts totaling more than $250,000 from billionaire friends in exchange for political favors.
Britain's Prince Andrew is stepping down from his public duties after an interview about his ties to American sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Prince Andrew has asked the Queen Mother, Elizabeth, for permission to leave his royal duties and step back for the foreseeable future. Royal commentators call the decision damage control after what's been called a disastrous interview with the BBC. The prince now says he does regret his friendship with the convicted sex offender.
The statement makes it very plain that he regrets very much everything that's happened and feels for the victims. But he didn't say that during his interview.
Since Prince Andrew won't officially be working, CBS News has learned he will lose his $300,000 a year paycheck, but he will continue to get a private allowance from his mother, the Queen.
Well, there's more at 4 when we come back. It's called the Zero Footprint Initiative, and it's meant to ease the guilt over the environmental impact of producing food.
We'll find out how it works and how a couple of restaurants in LA are making it work. That's when Live at 4 continues.
You're watching News 3 Now, live at 4.
Well, it was an exciting day at Camp Randall Stadium as the Blackhawk High School Warriors win the Division VII football state championship. South Wayne's Blackhawk High School only has 187 students, so they created a co-op with Warren High School just across the border in Illinois. It only took one touchdown to beat the Edgar Wildcats. The final score, 6-0.
It's exciting for them.
Congratulations, Blackhawk. Well, diners may soon have the chance to nibble away some of their climate guilt.
Restaurants across the country are taking part in the Zero Footprint Initiative. The initiative helps restaurants like Prue and Proper in Los Angeles reduce their carbon footprint by looking at how the food is prepared and how the business is run. Once the head chef did a carbon footprint assessment, he let that number guide nearly all aspects of the restaurant, from looking at how many deliveries are made every day to choosing vendors that are committed to renewable farming.
What we want to do is not just get a great product, but we want to get a product that's making a difference.
It's not just food and drinks. Zero Footprint restaurants are committed to renewable farming and reducing waste. Nearly 100 restaurants across the world are participating in the Zero Footprint Initiative. On Wall Street, investors stayed on the sidelines as doubts mount over progress in the China-U.S. trade deal. The Dow Industrials lost 54 points, closing at 27,766. The Nasdaq was off 20, and the S&P 500 fell almost 5. Well, it's virtually the weekend in the 608.
And here with a look at what's going on in the area is Madison Magazine Associate Editor Joel Patnod. Hi, Joel.
Hi, Joel.
Good to see you.
You too.
And we begin with Frozen 2.
That's right. It opens.
Everybody's excited about that.
I guess so.
I'm not. But
of a certain age.
Yes, of a certain age.
Yeah. It opens Friday night. And this, of course, is the much anticipated sequel to Disney's 2013, I think, original Frozen. But the Marcus Theaters, both in Madison and Sun Prairie, are throwing free Frozen 2 parties, both on Saturday and Sunday from noon to 2 p.m. Snacks and activities, including the making of paper snowflakes, will be offered, but tickets to the movie are not included. That should be pointed out. But of course, parents are, of course, encouraged to take their kids. I don't know how they would get away with not.
Right.
But that's happening both Saturday and Sunday.
You know, it's funny, you wouldn't think so, but you'd really like Frozen if you saw the first one.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Give it a chance,
those
right?
movies are as much for adults now as they are for kids.
Well, and Disney, they rarely have a miss.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
Our musical legend coming to town.
That's right. For an older audience.
For a certain age?
Yeah. Elvis Costello.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's bringing, of course, his long-standing backing band, the Imposters, to the Orpheum on Sunday night. The British pop rock singer-songwriter has been around since the 70s and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2003. His current tour is called Just Trust, so concert goers can trust they'll hear the hits, including Watching the Detectives, Less Than Zero, and Allison. So that's Sunday at the Orpheum.
Oh, very good. Now, there's something interesting coming, the Cirque du Sylvie.
Yes.
What is that? Is that new to Madison?
Well, you know...
The Sylvias.
The Sylvias. But the circus arts community has just been burgeoning in Madison for quite some time. The Madison Circus space on Winnebago Street is where it's all kind of centered. So, you know, they perform, they unicycling, German wheel, juggling, of course. All of this will be at the Sylvie for two very different shows. The first of which is at 6. It's called the Mad Circus Gala. That will be for all ages. Everything I mentioned, aerial arts and live music as well. And then at 10 p.m., an adults-only show that includes acts that involve fire and sword swallowing and burlesque as well. Both shows will include local and national acts that will absolutely wow audiences.
Well, that sounds unique.
It does.
Yeah.
But there's more and more of this in Madison.
Oh,
and
definitely.
It's
That's
fantastic.
true.
And another tradition in Madison, it lit up the streets last night, or Wednesday night, I think?
Yeah, it started last week, but Shine On Madison. That's meant to, it's an effort anyway, by the Madison Central Business Improvement District to coordinate holiday lighting downtown and attract shoppers. Shine On Madison runs through January 6th. There's a related event this Sunday, though, at the Monona Terrace and Convention Center, and that's the Madison Mini Maker Faire. That's a gathering of artists and crafters and engineers showing off their projects. Everything from the carrying of bonsai trees and making cat toys to building life-size R2-D2s.
Oh,
yeah.
Just when you thought the Capitol all lit up couldn't get any more beautiful.
That's right.
We were downtown last night. It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is really nice. It's worth seeing.
Well, it's the third year for it, and I think it's here to stay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Joel.
You bet.
Thanks, Joel. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Get this month's Madison magazine for all of the best in the Madison area.
There's more at 4. Later on this hour, we'll talk with political science professor Charles Franklin about the latest Marquette Law School poll.
And tonight at 5, we're updating breaking news from yesterday as the Dane County Sheriff's Office is investigating an alleged discrepancy in the amount of money collected in the door tubes at the Henry Viola Zoo. We'll see you at 5. Well, take a look at this. Many parents debate who their child looks like more, but one father takes matters into his own hands. This is Josh imitating his newborn baby's many adorable, funny, and wonderful faces. His sweet little lady named Billy certainly gives him a variety of expressions, and he seems to be spot on with his impressions. Josh has nicknamed her many looks, calling them her drunk milk faces. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Luckily, my son is looking more and more like my wife each day.
Now, I wish we had known we were doing this story because I would have had you pull up a picture of Rory. He looks exactly like Dave.
Sorry, Rory.
Exactly.
Unfortunately. Yeah. He's how old now?
Almost 7 months.
Wow.
Yeah,
Time
growing like
He
a
needs
weed.
to come in for a visit.
Yeah,
He'll
probably do a better forecast than me at this point. There is a lot of uncertainty for that storm before Thanksgiving, so we're watching that closely. We're also watching a very nice weekend on the way after all of the wild weather that we've been dealing with the past 24 hours. It's looking really nice over the next few days. We'll talk about it in just a few baby faces. Good afternoon. Hopefully you had a really nice Thursday. We started off very rainy on this Thursday with the heaviest downpours coming through right around 5 or 6 this morning, but most of the afternoon has been dry and it's been windy basically the entire day. So 24-hour precipitation, about a ½ an inch to an inch estimated by radar across much of southern Wisconsin. In Madison at the airport, we picked up basically a ½ an inch of rain today, a little bit last night just before midnight. So that brings our monthly precipitation total up to about 1½ inches. We're still well above normal when it comes to snowfall at 7½ inches, basically. So our rain totals or our liquid equivalent totals are pretty close to where they should be this time of the month. Madison on the WISC-TV Skycam, maybe a little light trying to shine through those clouds. That would be nice. I think we'll see gradual clearing as we get into later tonight, and then we'll start off actually mostly sunny for tomorrow morning. We'll be a lot colder though, with temperatures in the mid-20s. So today's high of 52, well above normal, 41 for this time of year, but temperatures have been falling pretty much ever since noon. It felt like spring for the first half of the day, although the last couple of hours have not really felt like that. So temperatures in the lower to middle 50s for highs, but just over the last 3 or 4 hours, we've seen those temperatures fall about 10 to 15 degrees as a strong cold front comes through. 46 still in Janesville, 41 in Madison, but temperatures into the mid 30s and well to the northwest. We're also still seeing some temperatures in the teens and 20s, so that colder air rushing in behind that front, and temperatures definitely falling fast for the rest of the day. We'll have some quiet weather this weekend, so that's at least some good news for folks that have outdoor plans. And we're actually getting a little bit milder on Saturday and Sunday with temperatures in the 40s, and we're still watching a potential impact weather maker for next Tuesday and Wednesday. I have 3 question marks there because there is a hefty amount of uncertainty. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So for opening day of gun deer hunting season on Saturday, temperatures starting off in the 20s will be in the low 40s by the afternoon. Normal temperatures, partly sunny skies. This is pretty nice weather to get out there on the range, and also a little bit breezy, so that's something to keep in mind. That breeze will be out of the south and west at about 10 to 15 miles per hour. So hunters, that's something to keep in mind there. Future track is showing that clearing trend as we head into the overnight hours, starting off in the mid-20s. But look at that, lots of sunshine on the way for our Friday, and highs will be a little bit below normal, but overall it's going to be a really pleasant weekend. Maybe a few more clouds coming in for Saturday and Sunday, but still plenty of sunshine, I think, on the way for this weekend. And that changes though as we get into next week. Monday will be quiet as well, but Tuesday and Wednesday potentially could have some big impacts for that pre-Thanksgiving travel. Here's what we do know at this point. Unsettled weather does return. Storm impacts the area, and the area is a general term because we don't exactly know where just yet before Thanksgiving, and colder temperatures follow that system. What we don't know right now is the exact timing or track of the storm, type of precipitation, because that depends on that track, and potential impacts to the end of the week at this point. A lot of times, especially in these early season storms, when you have strong upper level support like we do for next week, sometimes we can get some of that snow at the surface or rain at the surface to grow to the north and west. So there's still a lot that we don't know about that system, but we're keeping a very close eye on it. So alert days in the forecast Tuesday and Wednesday. Thanksgiving, most of the day should be dry with temperatures near 40, but then another potential rain and snow maker could be on the way Thursday night into Friday morning, and then Saturday and Sunday for the weekend, looking colder with temperatures in the low 30s. So
up and down.
Yeah, quiet for the next 3 or 4 days. After that, could be quite loud in some areas.
Keep an eye on things.
Yes.
All right, Dave, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Well, one of the draws of New York Central Park are its statues.
There are 25 of them, 23 men and 2 fictional women. Not a single one depicting women of distinction. Well, that's about to change.
I think about what it would have meant to me as a child to see this monument, to know these histories. I think about the size of it, the scale of it, where it will be, and who it will affect. And I am incredibly moved to have been chosen to add this to New York City.
Sculptor Meredith Bergman recognizes the honor of creating the first statue of women in New York Central Park. Bergman's monument to 3 leaders in the fight for women's rights, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Sojourner Truth, will take its place among the 23 statues of men and 2 fictional women, Mother Goose and Alice in Wonderland, currently in the park.
This monument is a contemporary evocation of the 19th century monument that should have been built for these women and wasn't. And that's part of why it's being allowed to be erected in Central Park, which is full of 19th century monuments to great men, but none to great women.
It has taken 6 years for the statue to become a reality. The effort was spearheaded by the nonprofit Monumental Women, which has raised $1.5 million to fund the statue. The idea initially met opposition from park officials who balked at putting any more statues in the 166-year-old park.
So we said, could you show me where that's written? Is it a law or a regulation or some sort of codification of there shall be no other statues? And of course they couldn't, because they made it up as they went along.
Final approval was granted in October after several redesigns and the addition of Sojourner Truth, an escaped slave and women's rights activist.
There were different changes, and I think there was a concern that there be a woman of color who was she was part of the decision-making for all of us to vote. And Sojourner Truth also was a New Yorker.
The original design was chosen from 91 entries. Bergman says the current design shows a slice in time open to interpretation.
It's a group of 3 women in conversation. The exact moment in the conversation is up to you to decide who is listening to whom, who is speaking to whom.
The monumental task of creating the 9-foot-tall statue has put Bergman on a tight timeline.
Because of the time urgency of this project, which working backward from August 2020, when they are to be unveiled, we need a number of weeks for installation, 4 to 6 months for bronze castings, which means 6 months for bronze casting, and then a month for mold making. I have to finish these by the end of this month, basically.
The monument will be dedicated on August 26, 2020, marking the 100th anniversary of American women winning the right to vote. It's interesting, there are no women's statues in Central Park.
Boy, I'm in awe of that kind of talent, though.
Yeah,
that's
amazing.
incredible.
It really is. So next August will be installed. Still to come at 4, more evidence of just how harmful vaping can be.
Doctors in Canada have found a new form of lung injury caused by vaping. We'll have more on that when Live at 4 continues.
The lights are on in downtown Madison on this Thursday, kind of gray, but improving over the next few days. Yep. Well, doctors believe they've discovered a new type of lung injury related to vaping.
They say a 17-year-old in Canada almost died after developing an injury similar to popcorn lung, which does not follow the pattern of lung injuries that have been seen in more than 2,000 cases in the U.S.
Doctors suspect flavored e-cigarettes are the cause. The teen vaped flavored and THC-containing products regularly. Dr. Tara Narula has more.
By the time the 17-year-old boy was admitted to an ICU in Ontario, Canada this past spring, what had started as a bad cough had developed into a life-threatening illness.
How critical did his condition get?
Extremely critical. He was on life support, and we were concerned that he might not survive.
Dr. Karen Bosma treated the patient, whose family doesn't want him identified. She says what she saw in his imaging didn't follow the usual pattern of vaping-related lung injury that has emerged in recent months, particularly in the United States.
We also did CT scans, and that gives us a deeper look at the lungs. That showed that he had a diffuse pattern. So if you picture the branches of a tree in the springtime when a tree is budding, that's what we were seeing on these images of the CT scan. And that's a pattern that is in keeping with damage.
Doctors diagnosed a form of bronchiolitis, also known as popcorn worker's lung. Small airways in the lungs become so inflamed and obstructed that they cannot expel carbon dioxide, which can then build up in the body to toxic levels. According to the study's authors, popcorn lung is different from the type of injury typically seen in vaping-related illness, where the damage occurs in the tiny air sacs or alveoli at the end of the airway. New York State investigators are testing vaping devices to see which compounds may be causing the lung illness. The Centers for Disease Control has identified vitamin E acetate as a common thread, but experts doubt that's the only culprit.
We absolutely continue to look for everything. We have not just sort of say, okay, we have found vitamin E acetate. We will continue to analyze and tease apart whatever chemicals are in the samples.
Both doctors, Zucker and Bosma, say regardless of the answer to these questions, the message to teens is clear. No device is safe for them to vape. Dr. Tara Narula, CBS News, New York.
At least 43 people have died from lung injuries related to vaping so far in the U.S.
Well, still to come at 4, the latest numbers for the Marquette Law School poll have been released.
The director of the poll, Charles Franklin, is in the green room tonight. He'll have those numbers.
He's whistling a happy tune out there.
And what they mean when Live at 4 continues. We'll be right back.
Good afternoon. Here's your Thursday First Alert traffic update. The Beltline and Park Street. We're seeing that a slow go in both directions, but especially on that eastbound side. We have had an incident just pop up on the interstate close to where a little bit north of Madison, in between Madison and Sun Prairie. That actually might be on 151 as well. We're also noticing those normal delays on the Beltline, especially eastbound. Those delays back up to about Verona Road and all the way to about Southtown Drive. So right now, 24 minutes to traverse the Beltline eastbound to the interstate. From University Ave, average speed of around 40 miles per hour, and some other routes in and around Madison. We're looking at 17 minutes in the other direction, westbound, with an average speed of around 50 miles per hour. That's your First Alert traffic update.
All right, Dave, thank you. The wait is over as one of the year's most anticipated wine events is underway. Parisians are enjoying a taste of the newly released Beaujolais Nouveau, the famous French young wine whose unveiling is keenly anticipated every year by wine lovers around the world. The grapes making up the wine in these bottles were harvested by hand only a few weeks ago. Beaujolais is a region spanning 34 miles north of Lyon, France, with 310 winemakers in the area.
That's my family Thanksgiving tradition. We always get the Beaujolais Nouveau.
Well, it's out today.
Yeah, I'll have to get to the store.
Stock up. We're still a few months away from Wisconsin's primary election, but Wisconsinites are already forming their opinion on the Democratic candidates as well as the ongoing impeachment inquiry.
Joining us now to talk about the results of the latest poll is the director of the Marquette Law School poll, Charles Franklin. Hi,
Welcome
Charles.
back.
Good to see
be
you.
here.
So when did you conduct this poll?
So we were in the field Wednesday through Sunday last week. Wednesday was the day that public testimony on impeachment began. So our first interviews were after the first afternoon's or day's public testimony. But of course, then we didn't get anything from this week's testimony. So it's just the beginning of last week's testimony.
But the testimony had begun.
It had begun, but hadn't been finished, and we were interviewing people throughout that period. So some had heard more, some had heard less.
So what did your numbers show?
Well, what we saw is a little bit of a decline in support for impeachment and removal. Last month it was 44% in favor. This month it's 40% in favor of impeaching and removing the president, and just over 50%, 53% opposed. But where that's coming from is substantially Republicans rallying behind the president, something that is a phenomenon we saw in the recall here in 2012, and we see it now. It's not a lot of movement. It's from 4 to 6 points more supportive of the president. What's more surprising is we didn't see Democrats rally in the opposite direction, rally in favor of impeachment. Part of that may be that they had already bumped up in support in the October data because that was when Nancy Pelosi had announced the impeachment hearings, and Democrats really moved in favor in that October data compared to where they'd been in April. The net effect of that is Democrats were a little bit less supportive of impeachment. Republicans were more opposed to impeachment. The net effect is this 4 percentage point change. Now, what's critical, though, is this week's testimony is the further evidence, and we'll really want to watch national polling as well as our polls to see what the full set of testimony does to public opinion on what happened and what should be done about it.
This was impeachment and removal.
Yes, we deliberately ask it that way. Other polling has found that there's really not much difference between being for impeachment and also being for removal. And since, as a practical matter, that's where we are, we didn't ask about the first step of impeachment only.
Let's move on to the presidential race.
And there was a Democratic presidential debate last night, and you looked at some head-to-head matchups.
That's right.
President Trump.
So on the general election, there too there's been a shift in President Trump's favor. Last month, Democrats were a little bit ahead, mostly inside the margin of error. This month, Trump is a little bit ahead, mostly inside the margin of error. One of the bigger moves was Joe Biden, who moved from 6 points ahead to Trump ahead by 3 against Biden. So that's a 9-point big move. It's smaller for Sanders, from Sanders 2 ahead to Sanders 3 behind, Warren from 1 ahead to 5 behind, and Pete Buttigieg, who had been 2 points behind Trump a month ago, is 8 points behind in this poll. We also asked a half of the sample about Amy Klobuchar, who was trailing by about 14, and Cory Booker, who was actually leading by 1 point. But that is a half sample with a big margin of error. And we don't see other evidence in the poll that Booker is surging. On the other hand, that's a good showing for him and almost surely deserves a full sample test next time.
Does it surprise you that it flipped like that?
I think that, and this was one of the things Nancy Pelosi had warned about on impeachment, that it does rally the other side. Republicans would be expected to rally around the president. Now the question is the cumulative weight of the evidence something that ultimately undermines support among Republicans? And I really think the stronger evidence that we've seen this week needs time to circulate, percolate through, and see where we are in a couple of weeks after the testimony ends. And people have had time to think about it. Do we actually see a move?
It was much stronger testimony this week than last.
I think that's right. It went more directly to some of the questions. We asked last time, did Trump ask for an investigation? 51% said he did. But we also asked, did he withhold military aid in order to pressure Ukraine to do the investigation? Only 41% said he had done that. We had direct evidence this week on the withholding military aid. Does that testimony change anybody's mind, both whether he did it, but then the follow-on question, was this a serious thing or not wrong at all? And we're about evenly divided on whether it was wrong and serious or not wrong at all.
Divided as ever.
As ever.
And the whole country.
Yep.
All right. Well, have a nice Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Take a little break from this.
Yeah. Sometime during dinner on Thursday.
All right, Charles. Thanks for coming in.
Great to see you, Charles.
We'll be right back with a final check your forecast.
All right, everybody, roll playback. 3.
Sun.
Yeah, this weekend we finally get that sunshine back. A little bit colder tomorrow and colder tonight as well, but still, I think we'll get a little milder by Saturday and Sunday. Madison, we're looking at those mostly cloudy skies. Those temperatures continuing to fall through the 30s as we get into the rest of tonight. Starting off tomorrow in the mid-20s, partly cloudy and colder overnight. And for tomorrow, plenty of sunshine, but those highs only in the mid to upper 30s. They'll still feel better with that sunshine by the rest of this weekend.
Well, 50s were nice while they lasted.
Yeah, exactly.
Those 3 hours.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Tomorrow on Live at 4, Lola and Louie have the top animal stories of the week on the News Hound.
And Michael Bruno goes backstage at Hamilton. He sits down with the actors who portray Alexander Hamilton and his wife. That's coming up tomorrow on Live at 4.